$1 million deals, stared straight ahead at the wall. Not at her. He had stopped looking at her months ago. The woman standing over him was his wife, and the woman kneeling on the floor 3 feet away, scrubbing the hardwood with a rag and a bucket of soapy water, pretending not to hear, pretending not to exist. That was the maid. But here's what the wife didn't know. Here's what she couldn't know. Because fate had been working in that house for months, quietly, invisibly, patiently building something that would collapse her entire world in a single afternoon. The man in the wheelchair was not as helpless as he appeared, and the maid on the floor was not who she claimed to be. And the moment that was coming, the moment when every lie, every insult, every act of cruelty would be repaid in full, that moment was closer than anyone in that house could have imagined. This is a story about what happens when you abuse someone who has already decided exactly how and when you will be held accountable. And if you think you know how this ends, you are wrong. Because fate had written this ending a long time ago, and fate's handwriting is always a surprise. But before I take you back to the beginning, if you believe that fate always delivers justice, go ahead and subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell. Because every week we bring you stories where every villain falls and every humble heart gets crowned. Now let's get into it. Kalu Okafor had been a man who moved through the world like he was built for it. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of physical presence that made people step aside without being asked. He had grown up in Aba, a Bia state, the youngest of 4 boys raised by a mother who sold fabrics in Ariaria Market and a father who repaired generators in a small shop behind their house. And there was no silver spoon. There was no inheritance. There was a woman who woke up at 4 a.m. every day to hustle, and a man who came home every night with engine grease under his nails and a determination that his sons would never have to do what he did. Kalu took that determination and turned it into rocket fuel. He won a scholarship to the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, studied computer science, graduated top of his class, got a visa to the United States, landed in Maryland with $200 in his pocket, a suitcase held together with tape, and a hunger that would not let him sleep. Within 5 years, he had built a cybersecurity consulting firm that served 3 federal government agencies. Within 8 years, the firm had 47 employees and was billing over $12 million a year. And within 10 years, Kalu Okafor was one of the most successful Nigerian tech entrepreneurs on the East Coast. He bought a house in Potomac, not just any house. A 6-bedroom estate on 2 acres with a 3-car garage, a home gym, a wine cellar, and a backyard that looked like a resort. Potomac is where the money lives in Maryland. Diplomats, surgeons, lobbyists, old money and new money sitting side by side behind hedgerows and iron gates. Kalu belonged there. He had earned every square foot. And then he met Amara. Amara Nwosu was 26 when Kalu met her at a Nigerian Independence Day gala in Washington, D.C. She was beautiful. Stunning, actually. The kind of woman who walked into a room and conversations paused. Tall, about 5'8", with smooth, rich, dark brown skin, sharp, high cheekbones, a cat-like, narrow, dark eyes that always seemed to be calculating something, a long, elegant nose, full lips that smiled wide and often but never quite warmly, and a body she dressed like a weapon, always tight, always revealing, always designed to make other women feel inadequate and other men feel distracted. She told Kalu she was a fashion buyer for a boutique in Georgetown. That was partially true. She worked at the boutique. She was not a buyer. She was a sales associate. But she had ambitions far beyond a sales floor. And when she looked at Kalu Okafor, 6'2", broad shoulders, custom suit, Potomac address, $12 million company, she didn't see a man. She saw a destination. They dated for 8 months. Kalu was charmed. Amara was strategic. And she learned his love language, acts of service, and she performed it flawlessly. She cooked for him. Igbo food. Ofe nsala that tasted like his mother's. She organized his closet. She remembered every small detail he mentioned and weaponized it into thoughtfulness. She studied him the way a general studies a battlefield. They married 14 months after meeting. Big wedding, 300 guests, a reception at the Four Seasons in Georgetown. Amara wore a custom white gown that cost $22,000. Kalu paid for everything and smiled while he did it because he believed he had found his partner. He had not found a partner. He had acquired a parasite. But love is a blindfold, and Kalu wore it willingly. For the first 3 years, things were manageable. Amara spent money aggressively. Designer bags, luxury cars, the spa weekends, trips to Miami and Dubai with girlfriends. But Kalu's company was printing cash, and he was not a man who fought about money. He grew up with nothing. If his wife wanted things, she could have things. That was his philosophy. But Amara wanted more than things. She wanted control, and control requires the other person to be smaller than you. She started with small cuts, criticizing how he dressed, mocking his Abba accent when it slipped through in front of her friends, rolling her eyes when he talked about his mother, canceling plans he made without asking her. Slowly, methodically, she rearranged their marriage until she was standing and he was sitting. And then fate intervened. The way fate always does, without warning, without mercy, without asking permission. 14 months ago, the Kalu was driving home from his office in Bethesda on a rainy Tuesday evening. Route 190, a wet curve, a delivery truck running a red light. The impact was on the driver's side. The car spun 3 times and hit a guardrail. Kalu was conscious for all of it. He heard the metal screaming. He felt the seatbelt cutting into his chest. He felt something in his lower back. Snap. Not break, not crack. Snap. Like a cable under tension releasing all at once. When he woke up at Suburban Hospital, he could not feel his legs. The diagnosis was a severe spinal cord injury at the L1 vertebra. The doctors were cautious. There is swelling. There is nerve damage. We cannot say definitively whether this is permanent. Some patients with this type of injury regain partial function. Some do not. It depends on many factors. The body's healing response, physical therapy, time. Time. That word would become the most important word in Kalu Okafor's life. For the first 3 months after the accident, Amara performed the role of devoted wife. She was at the hospital every day. She posted on Instagram photos of her holding Kalu's hand with captions like, "My rock, my warrior, we will get through this together," followed by prayer emojis and hashtags. She organized a meal train from the Nigerian community. She accepted flowers and casseroles and sympathy with the grace of a woman who wanted everyone to see her sacrifice. But behind closed doors, in the house in Potomac where no Instagram camera could reach, something else was happening. Amara was suffocating. She had married a man who could carry her into rooms, a man who stood 6'2" and filled doorways, and a man whose physical presence matched the size of his bank account. Now that man sat in a wheelchair and needed help getting from the bed to the bathroom. And Amara, who had never loved Kalu for who he was, only for what he represented, could not handle the downgrade. It started at the 4-month mark. Small comments. "You're getting heavier. I can barely push this chair," said with a laugh, but not a kind laugh. Then louder comments. "Do you know how embarrassing it is to go to events with you in that thing?" People stare. Then open cruelty. "I didn't sign up for this, Kalu. I married a man, not a patient, not a project." By the 6-month mark, the mask was completely off. She stopped helping him, stopped cooking for him, stopped pushing his wheelchair, stopped touching him. She moved to the guest bedroom. She went out at night and came back in the early morning smelling like cologne that was not Kalu's. She stopped hiding her phone calls. She laughed loudly in the kitchen with someone named D, while Kalu sat in his wheelchair in the living room 15 feet away hearing every word. And then came the worst part. The daily humiliations. She would stand over him in his wheelchair and look down at him the way someone looks at furniture they want to throw away. "Look at you. You used to be somebody. Now what are you? You can't walk. You can't work properly. You can't do anything a man is supposed to do. You're just a chair with a body in it." She said this in front of the home health aide who came 3 times a week. The aide quit after 2 weeks because she couldn't stomach watching it. She said this in front of Kalu's business partner, in David, who visited the house one evening and left white-faced and shaking with barely contained rage. And she said this in front of the maid. The maid. This is where fate steps into the story wearing a disguise, so pay very close attention. 8 months after Kalu's accident, Amara decided she needed a full-time housekeeper. Not because the house was dirty, because she wanted someone else to deal with everything she considered beneath her: the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, and most importantly, the task she despised most, helping Kalu with his daily needs. She posted an ad online, simple requirements. Live-in housekeeper needed. Must cook, clean, and assist disabled family member with basic care. $500 per week. 14 women applied. Amara interviewed 3. She hired the one who seemed the most invisible, and her name was Blessing Adeyemi. Blessing was 34 years old. She was short, about 5'3", with a round, gentle face, soft, warm brown skin a shade lighter than Kalu's deep tone, wide, kind, dark brown eyes that seemed to absorb everything without judgment, a small, flat nose, full lips that defaulted to a slight sympathetic smile, and a compact, sturdy build that suggested she was stronger than she looked. She wore her hair in simple short twists close to her head. No makeup, no jewelry. She dressed in plain, modest clothing, solid color t-shirts, simple skirts or pants, flat practical shoes. She spoke softly. She moved quietly. She kept her eyes down when Amara talked to her. She said, "Yes, Ma," to everything. Amara looked at her and saw exactly what she wanted to see. A small, quiet, invisible worker who would do what she was told and witness nothing. Amara was wrong. Amara was catastrophically, irreversibly wrong, and fate was already laughing. Because Blessing Adeyemi was not a housekeeper. Blessing Adeyemi held a doctorate in physical rehabilitation medicine from Howard University. She had spent 7 years as a physical therapist, specializing in spinal cord injury recovery at MedStar National Rehabilitation Hospital in Washington, D.C. She had published 12 peer-reviewed papers on neuroplasticity and motor function recovery. She had helped over 40 patients with spinal cord injuries regain partial or full mobility. She was one of the best in her field. So why was she scrubbing floors in Potomac for $500 a week? Because of David. And David Achebe was Kalu's business partner and closest friend. They had built the cybersecurity firm together from nothing. When Kalu's accident happened, David took over daily operations of the company without hesitation. He visited Kalu weekly. He watched the situation in the house deteriorate. He watched Amara transform from a negligent wife into an openly abusive one. He watched the home health aide quit. He watched Kalu retreat deeper and deeper into silence, and he decided to do something about it. David had a cousin who worked at MedStar. That cousin knew Blessing. David called Blessing and explained the situation. "My partner is in a wheelchair. His wife is abusing him. She's isolated him from outside help. She fired the home health aide. She controls who comes into the house. But she's looking for a housekeeper. Someone who will cook and clean and take care of him while she goes out and lives her life." Blessing listened without interrupting. "I need someone in that house who can do 2 things, David continued. "First, document the abuse. Second, and this is the real reason I'm calling you, I need someone who can evaluate whether Kalu can recover. His doctors said the injury might not be permanent, but Amara has canceled every follow-up appointment. She's stopped his physical therapy. She wants him in that chair, Blessing, because a man in a wheelchair can't leave, can't fight back, can't see what she's doing with his money." Blessing asked one question. "Does he want help?" David paused. "He doesn't know I'm doing this. He's depressed. He's given up. But I know my partner. If someone gives him a reason to fight, he will fight. That man has more strength in his silence than most people have in their loudest moments. Blessing agreed. She took a leave of absence from MedStar. She put on plain clothes. She removed her credentials from her name. She showed up at the Okafor house in Potomac with a fake resume and a real mission, and Amara hired her on the spot. Because Amara saw a maid, fate saw a weapon. Now real quick, if you are already hooked on this story, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now and tell me what you think is going to happen when Kalu finds out who Blessing really is. I want to see who guessed right by the end. And if you haven't already, smash that like button because it helps this story reach more people who need to hear it. All right, back to the story. Blessing moved into the Okafor house on a Wednesday, and the house was beautiful from the outside. 6 bedrooms, manicured lawn, 3-car garage with a white Mercedes GLE, a black BMW 7 Series, and a red Porsche Cayenne. The Porsche was Amara's, bought 6 months after Kalu's accident with his money. The neighborhood was quiet, wealthy, and completely unaware of what was happening behind the Okafor front door. Inside, the house told a different story. The main floor was immaculate. Amara kept the areas visible to guests perfect. Fresh flowers on the dining table, magazines fanned on the coffee table, scented candles, the performance of a happy home. But Kalu's world had been reduced to 2 rooms. The master bedroom on the ground floor, converted after the accident because he could no longer navigate stairs, and the living room. That was it. Bedroom. Living room. And the 12-foot hallway between them. That was the entire geography of his existence. His bedroom was functional but cold. Hospital-style adjustable bed, wheelchair charging station, grab bars in the bathroom, medical supplies on a shelf, no personal touches, no photos, no warmth. It looked like a room where someone was being stored, not where someone was living. Blessing noticed all of this within her first hour. She also noticed Kalu. He sat in his wheelchair in the living room facing the large bay window that looked out over the back lawn. He wore a plain white t-shirt and gray sweatpants. His frame, once broad and commanding, had thinned from months of inactivity and poor nutrition. His face was gaunt. His beard was unkempt. His eyes, when they briefly met hers, were the eyes of a man who had stopped expecting anything good. Kalu, this is the new maid, Amara said, gesturing at Blessing the way you gesture at a new appliance. Her name is... What is it again? Blessing, Ma. Right. Blessing. She'll handle your food, your laundry, cleaning, and... Amara waved her hand vaguely toward Kalu. Whatever you need. I have a lunch. I'll be back later. She grabbed her Birkin bag and walked out. The Porsche started in the garage. The garage door opened and closed. She was gone. Silence. Blessing stood in the living room. Kalu sat in his wheelchair. They looked at each other. You don't have to pretend to be comfortable, Kalu said. His voice was quiet but clear, not weak, controlled. Everyone who works here leaves within a month. She makes sure of that. I'm not going anywhere, sir. Something flickered in his eyes. And not hope. It was too early for hope. But curiosity. The faintest ember of curiosity in a man who had stopped being curious about anything. We'll see, he said. And he turned back to the window. Blessing got to work. She cleaned the kitchen. She organized the refrigerator, which was stocked with expensive food that Amara ate and wine that Amara drank, but contained almost nothing suitable for a man who needed high-protein meals for muscle maintenance and nerve recovery. She noted that. She made a list. She cooked Kalu a proper meal that evening: grilled chicken, steamed vegetables, brown rice, a side of fresh fruit. She brought it to him on a tray. He looked at the plate, then at her. Amara doesn't cook like this. Amara didn't cook this. I did. He almost smiled. Almost. And the muscles in his face moved toward a smile but stopped short, as if they had forgotten how to complete the motion. That night, after Kalu was settled in his bedroom and Amara had returned home and gone straight to the guest bedroom without checking on her husband, Blessing sat in her small room off the kitchen and made 2 phone calls. The first was to David. "I'm in. The situation is worse than you described. He's malnourished. His muscle tone is severely deteriorated. She's canceled all his medical appointments. He has had 0 physical therapy in at least 6 months. But David, I examined his reflexes while helping him transfer from the chair to the bed. He has sensation in his right leg, faint but present. His left leg has some involuntary movement. This injury is not necessarily permanent. With proper rehabilitation, consistent therapy and nutrition, there is a real possibility of partial recovery. Maybe more." David was quiet for a long moment. "Are you saying he could walk again?" "I'm saying I've seen patients with similar injuries walk again. It's not guaranteed. It depends on his commitment, his body's response, and time. But the window is still open. Barely. If we wait much longer, the neural pathways will close permanently." "What do you need?" "I need him to want it. I can't force rehabilitation on a man who has given up. I need to reach him first. That might be the hardest part." The second call was to her colleague at MedStar. She requested a portable assessment kit to be delivered to David's office. She would pick it up when Amara was out of the house. Fate had placed its operative inside the fortress. Now the real work began. And it took Blessing 3 weeks to reach Kalu. 3 weeks of cooking proper meals. 3 weeks of keeping his room clean and warm and human. 3 weeks of small conversations, never pushing, never prying, just being present, asking about his work, asking about his childhood in Abba, asking about his mother, and watching his face soften for the first time when he talked about her. 3 weeks of witnessing Amara's cruelty and absorbing it without reaction, the same way she needed Kalu to see her absorb it, to show him that someone could stand in the blast radius of this woman's venom and not be destroyed. Because that was the key. Kalu had not given up because of his legs. He had given up because he believed he was alone. He believed no one saw what was happening. He believed no one cared. And when a man believes that, when he believes the world has turned its back, his body follows. The muscles atrophy, the nerves go quiet, the healing stops. Not because the body can't recover, because the soul has stopped asking it to. Blessing needed to restart that request. On the 22nd day, it happened. Amara came home at 2 p.m. after a 3-hour lunch. She walked into the living room where Kalu sat in his wheelchair and Blessing was mopping the floor nearby. Amara was on the phone, laughing, loudly. She put the phone on speaker, deliberately, performatively, and a man's voice filled the room. "Baby, when are you coming back? I miss you already." "Soon, Dee. Let me just check on my patient." She said the word patient like it tasted sour. She looked at Kalu. "Oh, look, he hasn't moved. Shocking." The man on the phone laughed. Amara walked over to Kalu's wheelchair. She looked down at him. "Dee wants to take me to Cancun next month. I told him I might have to bring my wheelchair as carry-on luggage." She laughed. The man on the phone laughed. Kalu did not move, did not react, did not look at her. Amara leaned down close to his ear. "You know what the saddest part is, Kalu? You could die in that chair and I wouldn't even notice for 3 days." She straightened up, flipped her hair, and walked out of the room still laughing with Dee on the phone. Silence. Blessing kept mopping. Her hands were steady, but her jaw was clenched so tight she could feel her teeth grinding. She had spent 7 years working with trauma patients. She had heard terrible things. She had seen terrible things. But watching a wife say that to her husband, calmly, casually, while a man laughed on speakerphone, was something that reached a part of her professional detachment and cracked it. She looked at Kalu. He was still staring at the wall, but something was different. His hands on the armrests of the wheelchair were no longer resting. They were gripping. His knuckles were pressed white against the padded armrests. His jaw was clenched. A vein in his temple was visible. And his eyes, those deep-set, dark, intelligent eyes, were not empty anymore. They were burning. Blessing put down the mop. She walked to the living room entrance and checked that Amara had gone upstairs. She heard the guest bedroom door close. Music turned on. Amara was done performing for the day. Blessing walked back to Kalu. Then she knelt down beside his wheelchair so she was at his eye level. She spoke quietly. "Mr. Okafor, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to me very carefully." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since she arrived. "I am not a maid." His eyebrows moved, just slightly. "My name is Dr. Blessing Adeyemi. I am a physical rehabilitation specialist. I have a doctorate from Howard University. I have spent 7 years helping people with spinal cord injuries learn to move again. Your friend David sent me here because he believes you are being abused. He believes your recovery has been deliberately sabotaged, and he believes you still have a chance to walk again." She paused to let the words land. "I have been observing you for 3 weeks. I have tested your reflexes during transfers. I have watched your involuntary muscle responses. Mr. Okafor, you have sensation in your right leg. You have movement potential in your left. Your injury is serious, but I have seen patients with worse injuries stand up and walk out of my clinic." Kalu's eyes were glistening. His grip on the armrests had not loosened. "But I need to be honest with you. The window for recovery is closing. Every month without proper therapy, the neural pathways deteriorate further. If we do not start now, right now, the chance may be lost permanently." She leaned closer. "So I need to ask you one question, Mr. Okafor, and everything depends on your answer." She looked directly into his eyes. "Do you want to walk again?" Silence. A long, heavy, loaded silence. Then Kalu Okafor, the man who had not smiled in 6 months, and the man who had stopped speaking in full sentences, the man who had been sitting in that wheelchair staring at walls while his wife laughed at him and paraded her lover through his house, Kalu Okafor said one word: "Yes." And fate, who had been crouching in the corner of that living room for 3 weeks, waiting, watching, holding its breath, fate exhaled. The secret rehabilitation began the next day. They had a narrow window every day. Amara left the house between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. almost without exception. Lunches with friends, shopping trips, visits to Dee's apartment in Silver Spring. 4 hours. That was the window. Blessing converted the home gym in the basement, a room Amara never entered because exercise was something she considered unnecessary when you could simply buy clothes in a smaller size, into a rehabilitation space. She brought in the portable assessment equipment through David. She set up parallel bars using PVC pipes and hardware from Home Depot. She ordered resistance bands and therapy balls and had them delivered to David's office. The first session was brutal. Kalu could not stand. He could not support his own weight. His legs buckled the moment pressure was applied. His core muscles had atrophied to the point where sitting upright without the wheelchair's support was a struggle. Blessing expected this. She had seen it 40 times before. "This is day 1, she told him as he sat on the therapy mat breathing hard, sweat soaking his t-shirt, frustration burning in his face. "Day 1 is always the worst. Day 2 is slightly less terrible. Day 30, you will not recognize yourself." Kalu looked at her with an expression she had seen on every patient she had ever worked with. The expression of someone who wants to believe but is terrified of hoping. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then you will be a man who tried, and that is infinitely more than a man who didn't." He nodded. They continued. Day 7. Kalu could sit upright on the mat without support for 45 seconds. Day 14. He could feel pressure applied to both feet. He could wiggle the toes on his right foot. Day 21. Standing between the parallel bars for 8 seconds before his legs gave out. Day 30. Standing for 30 seconds. Assisted. Trembling. But standing. The progress was not linear. There were bad days. Days where nothing worked. Days where his body refused. and days where the pain was so intense that Kalu gritted his teeth until Blessing could see the veins in his neck. Days where he wanted to quit. But Blessing would not let him quit. Not because she was cruel, because she knew something Kalu was still learning, that his body could do this. The signals were there, the nerves were firing, the pathways were rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but they were rebuilding. And through all of this, every single day, Amara continued her performance upstairs. Unaware, oblivious, spending Kalu's money, laughing with Dee on the phone, coming home at night smelling like another man's cologne and walking past her husband's room without even glancing inside. She had no idea that directly below her feet, in the basement she never visited, her husband was learning to stand. A fate was building something in that basement, and Amara was dancing on the floor above it. Now there was another layer to this that Amara did not know about, and this is where the story gets even darker. David, Kalu's business partner, had been running the company solo since the accident. He had full access to the company financials. And 3 months into Blessing's mission, David found something that made his blood run cold. Money was missing. Not small amounts. Significant amounts. Over the past 12 months, approximately $650,000 had been transferred from Kalu's personal accounts into an account that David did not recognize. He traced the account. It was in Amara's maiden name, Amara Nwosu. She had been siphoning Kalu's money systematically since the month after his accident. While he sat in his wheelchair. While she mocked him. While she told him he was nothing. She was draining his accounts with the methodical precision of someone who had planned this from the moment the doctors said he might not walk again. David brought this information to Kalu during one of Blessing's therapy sessions in the basement. Kalu looked at the printed bank statements, page after page of transfers. His face did not crumble. It did not collapse. It went still. Perfectly. Terrifyingly still. The face of a man who has just been handed the final piece of a puzzle he didn't know he was solving. How much? His voice was flat. $650,000 over 12 months. And she's been making purchases on your credit cards on top of that. The Porsche, jewelry, trips. And the total damage is closer to $900,000. Kalu set the papers down on the therapy mat. I want a lawyer. I already have one. Eleanor Williams, Georgetown Law. She specializes in marital fraud and asset protection. She's ready when you are. I'm ready now. And right there, in the basement of his own house, sitting on a therapy mat, with his legs trembling from the morning's exercises, Kalu began building his case. Blessing documented the abuse. She had been keeping a log since her first day. Date, time, what was said, what was done. She had recordings, audio captured on her phone during Amara's worst tirades. She had photographs of Kalu's living conditions, the sparse medical supplies, the empty refrigerator, the canceled therapy appointments. David provided the financial evidence, bank statements, but transfer records, credit card bills, the shadow account in Amara's maiden name. Eleanor the lawyer reviewed everything and said 5 words. This woman is going down. But Kalu wanted more than a legal victory. He wanted Amara to feel exactly what she had made him feel. Not through cruelty, Kalu was not cruel. Through truth. He wanted the truth delivered in a place she could not hide from it and in a way she could not deny. And that is when the plan for the family gathering was born. Hold on. Before I reveal what happened next, if this story has had you glued to your screen, hit that like button right now. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Because what happens next is the part nobody saw coming. By month 5 of Blessing's secret therapy, Kalu could stand independently for 3 minutes. He could take 4 steps with a walker. His right leg was bearing weight. His left leg was responding to commands intermittently. Sensation had returned to both legs almost fully. By month 6, Kalu could walk across the basement, slowly, with focus, with effort. But he could walk. 12 steps, then 20, then across the full length of the room. The first time he walked 20 steps without support, he stopped, stood in the middle of the basement and cried, not from pain, from remembering what it felt like to be vertical, to look at the world from 6'2" instead of 3'6" in a wheelchair. Blessing cried too. She turned away so he wouldn't see. But she cried. And through all 6 months of this miracle happening beneath her feet, Amara noticed nothing. And she never went to the basement. She never checked on Kalu's condition. She never asked how he was feeling. She continued her routine. Leave at 11, return at 3 or later, mock him if she happened to see him, retreat to the guest bedroom, call D, repeat. She was so consumed with her own cruelty that she was blind to the resurrection happening 12 feet below her designer shoes. Kalu continued to use the wheelchair upstairs. Every day. He sat in it when Amara was home. He allowed Blessing to push him. He played the role of the broken man. He watched Amara with those intelligent dark eyes, and he said nothing. But he was not the same man in that chair. The man in that chair was no longer defeated. He was waiting, and fate was waiting with him. Amara's birthday was approaching. She was turning 35. And she decided to throw a party. Not just any party, a family gathering. She invited Kalu's family from Nigeria, his 3 older brothers and their wives, his mother Mama Okafor, who was flying in from Aba. She also invited her own parents, her sisters, and a selection of friends from the Nigerian community in the DMV area. The guest list was about 60 people. Now you might ask why Amara would invite Kalu's family, the family she had kept at a distance for over a year. The answer is simple and cold. Amara was planning to announce the divorce at the gathering. She wanted witnesses. She wanted Kalu's family to see their broken son in his wheelchair and understand that Amara had sacrificed enough. She wanted sympathy from her own family. She wanted to control the narrative before Kalu could. She even told Kalu about the gathering. Casually, cruelly. Your mother is coming. Your brothers too. Try to look presentable. I don't want them thinking I've been neglecting you. She laughed at her own joke. Kalu looked at her from his wheelchair, and for the first time in 14 months, he smiled. Amara didn't notice the smile. If she had, she might have felt something cold run down her spine, because it was not a smile of amusement. It was the smile of a man who had just been handed the stage he needed. He called David that night. The gathering. That's when we do it. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. The preparation was meticulous. David coordinated with Eleanor, the lawyer, to have the legal documents ready. The evidence of financial fraud, the asset protection filings, the formal separation paperwork. Blessing intensified the therapy sessions. Kalu was walking 30 steps independently now. His gait was slow but steady. He would not be running any races, but he could stand up from a chair and walk across a room under his own power. For the plan, that was enough. That was more than enough. They rehearsed the moment. Kalu would be in his wheelchair at the gathering as usual. At a specific point, after Amara made her divorce speech, Kalu would ask to respond. And then he would stand. And then he would walk. And then he would speak. Blessing would be there, not as a guest, as the maid, serving food, clearing plates, invisible, exactly where Amara always wanted her. The day arrived, a Saturday in October. The Okafor house in Potomac was transformed. Amara had hired caterers. A canopy was set up in the backyard. White chairs arranged in rows facing a small decorated area with a microphone and speakers. Jollof rice, pounded yam, egusi soup, suya, small chops, drinks, music, the works. The guests arrived between 2 and 3 p.m. Kalu's 3 brothers, Chukwudi, Obinna, and Namdi, arrived first with their wives. They hugged Kalu carefully, fighting to keep their faces composed as they saw the state of him. The thinned frame, the wheelchair, the gaunt face. Mama Okafor arrived last. She was a small, fierce woman in her late 60s who walked into the house, looked at her son in the wheelchair, looked at the house around him, looked at Amara standing in a designer dress taking selfies by the canopy, and said nothing. But her eyes said everything. Amara's parents arrived, her sisters, friends from the community. The backyard filled up. Music played. A food was served. Blessing moved through the gathering in her plain clothes, carrying trays, clearing plates, refilling drinks. Invisible. Just the maid. Nobody looked at her twice. At 4:30 p.m., Amara stepped to the microphone. She wore a white fitted dress, white heels, gold jewelry. Her hair was freshly done. She looked beautiful, and she knew it. Family, friends, thank you all for being here for my birthday. This has been a difficult year for this family. As you all know, Kalu's accident changed everything. She paused, pressed her hand to her chest. Performance. I have tried. God knows I have tried to be the wife he needs. I have sacrificed my career, my social life, my happiness. I have given everything to care for this man. But there comes a point where you have to choose yourself. She looked at Kalu, and he sat in his wheelchair at the end of the front row. His face was unreadable. It is with a heavy heart that I want to share with you all that Kalu and I have decided to go our separate ways. I will always love him, but I cannot continue to live like this. I hope you all understand. She dabbed at a tear that was not there. Murmurs through the crowd. Kalu's brothers exchanged dark glances. Mama Okafor sat perfectly still with her hands folded in her lap and fire in her eyes. Amara smiled bravely. Does anyone have any? I would like to say something. Kalu's voice cut through the murmurs. Clear, strong, not the voice of a broken man, the voice of a man who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Amara blinked. Of course, baby. Go ahead. She expected a tearful acceptance, a broken man agreeing to his own disposal. Or she expected the wheelchair speech, the, I understand, I wish you the best, I'm sorry I couldn't be enough speech. She was wrong. Kalu placed both hands on the armrests of his wheelchair. He gripped them the way he had gripped them 6 months ago when Amara told him he could die and she wouldn't notice. His knuckles went white, and then he pushed. His arms straightened, his body rose, slowly. The wheelchair rolled backward slightly on the grass. He was standing, 6 foot 2, standing. The crowd went silent, not quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when the laws of the universe rearrange themselves in front of your eyes. Amara's mouth fell open. The microphone in her hand tilted. Her eyes went wide, wider than Blessing had ever seen in 6 months of living in that house. Kalu. What are you? He took a step, then another, then another. Slow, deliberate. Each step steady. Each step saying the same thing his footsteps had been saying in the basement for 6 months. I am still here. I was always here. You just stopped looking. He walked to the microphone area. 12 steps. The longest walk of his life, and the shortest. Every step was a lifetime. Every step was nothing. He stopped in front of Amara. He was taller than her by 6 inches. She had forgotten that. She had gotten used to looking down at him. Now she had to look up. He gently took the microphone from her frozen hand. He turned to face the gathering. My family, my friends, thank you for being here. I have something to share with you today, too. His voice was steady, controlled. The voice of a CEO addressing a board, and the voice of a man from Abba whose mother sold fabric and whose father repaired generators and who had built a $12 million company from nothing. For the past 14 months, my wife has told me I am nothing. She has told me I am half a man. She has told me I could die in my wheelchair and she would not notice for 3 days. She said these things in front of caregivers who quit because they couldn't watch. She said them in front of my business partner. She said them in front of the woman standing right there. He pointed at Blessing. Every head turned. This woman. The woman my wife hired as a maid. The woman she ordered to clean toilets and scrub floors. This woman is Dr. Blessing Adeyemi. She holds a doctorate from Howard University. She is one of the leading physical rehabilitation specialists in the Washington, D.C. area. She was placed in this house by my business partner David to do two things: document the abuse I have been suffering and help me learn to walk again. The crowd erupted in gasps, whispers. Mama Okafor's hand went to her mouth. Kalu's brothers were on their feet. Amara was backing away, step by step, her white heels sinking into the grass. For 6 months, Kalu continued, I have been doing physical therapy in the basement of my own house, the basement my wife has never once entered. Every day while she was out spending my money and visiting her boyfriend in Silver Spring, I was downstairs learning to stand, learning to walk, learning to be the man she told me I would never be again. He paused. Let the words settle. But that is not all. He reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulled out a folded stack of papers. Over the past 12 months, my wife has transferred $650,000 from my personal accounts into a secret account in her maiden name. She has charged an additional $250,000 to my credit cards for personal purchases, including the red Porsche in the driveway. My lawyer, Eleanor Williams, has documented everything. Asset protection orders have already been filed. As of this morning, every account has been frozen and every asset has been secured in a trust that my wife cannot access. Amara's face was white. Her legs were shaking. She looked like she might fall. You wanted a divorce, Amara? Kalu said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. And that was the most devastating part. He was not screaming. He was not raging. He was simply stating facts with the composure of a man who had been rehearsing this moment for months. You can have your divorce. The papers are ready. But you will leave this marriage with exactly what you brought into it. He paused. Nothing. The crowd was completely still. Then Mama Okafor stood up from her chair. This small, fierce woman from Abba walked to her son. She reached up. She had to reach up because he was standing, her son was standing, and she placed both hands on his face. Nwayem, she said. My child. Her voice broke on the second word. Tears ran down her face. I knew you would stand again. You are your father's son. You are my son. No woman, no accident, no wheelchair can keep an Okafor down. Kalu broke then, and the composure cracked. He pulled his mother into his arms, both arms, standing on both legs, and held her while she sobbed into his chest. The crowd erupted, not in silence this time, in noise, in applause, in cheers, in the raw, unfiltered sound of 60 people witnessing a miracle and a reckoning at the same time. Kalu's brothers surrounded him, hugging him, slapping his back, crying openly. These were men from Abba, men who did not cry. They were crying. David stood at the edge of the crowd with his arms crossed and tears running down his face and a smile so wide it looked like it hurt. And Blessing, Dr. Blessing Adeyemi, stood near the catering table in her plain clothes, holding an empty tray, watching her patient stand in his mother's arms. She set the tray down quietly. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And she smiled the smile of a woman who had just watched 6 months of work produce a moment she would remember for the rest of her life. And Amara? Amara stood alone on the grass in her white birthday dress and her white heels and her gold jewelry. Nobody was looking at her. Nobody was speaking to her. Her own parents sat frozen in their chairs. Her sisters stared at the ground. Her friends had physically moved away from her, creating a circle of empty space around her like she was contagious. She stood there and she felt it. The thing she had made Kalu feel every single day for 14 months. Invisibility. Nobody seeing you. Nobody caring. Nobody choosing you. Standing in a room full of people and being completely, utterly alone. Fate doesn't just balance the scales. Fate makes you stand on the side you put others on, and the aftermath was swift. Eleanor Williams filed the divorce papers on Monday. The financial fraud evidence was presented to a judge who issued an immediate order freezing all of Amara's access to Kalu's accounts. The shadow account in her maiden name was seized. The Porsche was repossessed. The jewelry purchased with Kalu's credit cards was cataloged for recovery. Amara retained a lawyer. Her lawyer reviewed the evidence, the bank statements, the recordings of verbal abuse, Blessing's documented log, David's financial audit, and reportedly told Amara, "Mrs. Okafor, I strongly advise you to settle. If this goes to trial, you will not just lose, you will be destroyed." Amara settled. She left the Potomac house with her clothes and nothing else. She moved into a one-bedroom apartment in College Park. Her parents, humiliated, I returned to Nigeria without speaking to her. Her sisters cut contact. Her friend circle, which had been built entirely on the foundation of Kalu's money and the lifestyle it provided, evaporated overnight. D, the boyfriend from Silver Spring, disappeared the moment he learned there was no more money. Amara called him 14 times the week after the gathering. He answered none of them. And Kalu? Kalu continued his rehabilitation. Blessing stayed on, not as a maid, as his physical therapist, formally hired through MedStar with full compensation. Within 3 months of the gathering, Kalu was walking with a cane. Within 6 months, without one. His gait was not perfect. It might never be perfect. But he was vertical. He was moving. He was alive in a way he had not been alive since the accident. He returned to his company, and not full-time. David continued to manage daily operations. But Kalu was in the office 3 days a week, taking meetings, making decisions, rebuilding the thing he had built from nothing the first time. Mama Okafor stayed in Potomac for 2 months after the gathering. She cooked for her son every day. Ofensala, egusi, abacha, the food of home, the food that heals. On her last night before flying back to Aba, she sat with Kalu on the back porch, looking at the yard where 60 people had watched him stand. "That woman was a test," Mama Okafor said. "Fate was testing you, not with the accident. The accident was just the wind. She was the test. Could you survive being married to someone who wanted you broken? Could you find your strength when the person who was supposed to be your strength was your greatest enemy?" Kalu looked at his mother. "And the maid?" he asked. Mama Okafor smiled. The maid was fate's answer. Fate always sends the answer before the question destroys you. You just have to be patient enough to recognize it. Kalu looked out at the yard. The chairs were gone. The canopy was gone. The microphone was gone. It was just grass and sky and the quiet sound of evening in Potomac. "I almost gave up, Mama." Almost is not the same as actually. Almost means you were still fighting, even when you didn't know it. She held his hand. He held hers. A mother and her son sitting on a porch in Maryland, 6,000 miles from Aba, connected to something that no accident, no cruel wife, and no wheelchair could ever break. If this story touched you, hit the like button right now. It costs you nothing, but it means everything for this channel. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have forgiven Amara or would you have pressed charges? I want to hear your honest answer. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. And if you are not subscribed yet, join the family right now. We drop new stories every single week where fate always keeps the score. Hit subscribe, hit the bell. I promise you the next story will hit even harder than this one. 3 lessons before this story closes. First, never underestimate a person in their lowest moment. Kalu was in a wheelchair. He was mocked. He was robbed. He was abandoned by the one person who swore before God to stand with him. And from that wheelchair, in a basement, and with a physical therapist disguised as a maid, he rebuilt himself. The lowest moment is not the end of the story. It is the plot twist the audience hasn't reached yet. Second, the people who abuse you when you are down are telling you exactly who they are. Amara did not become cruel because of the accident. The accident simply removed the reason she was pretending to be kind. The money, the status, the lifestyle. When those things were threatened, the mask fell. Cruelty is not a reaction. It is a character trait waiting for permission. Pay attention to how people treat those who can do nothing for them. That is who they really are. Third, fate sends the answer before the question destroys you. David sent blessing before Kalu gave up completely. The window for recovery was closing. A few more months and it would have been too late. And the help arrived just in time. Not early enough to prevent the suffering, because suffering was part of the journey, but not late enough to prevent the miracle. That is how fate works. Not on your schedule, on its schedule. And fate's timing is always perfect even when it doesn't feel like it. Be careful how you treat people when they are down. Be very careful, because the person in the wheelchair might be learning to walk in the basement. The maid scrubbing your floors might be a doctor with a doctorate. And the man you told could die without being missed might be the same man who stands up at your party and takes back everything you stole. Fate doesn't forget. Fate doesn't forgive. And fate, as Amara learned on a Saturday afternoon in Potomac, Maryland, fate never, ever misses. Old wisdom, new drama, perfect justice. I'll see you in the next one.
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respétenme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de quién redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué basado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas. Y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista. En el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también, hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet, y a ver si pasan pues algunos monies. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha, y eso es mucha verdad, y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque él tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer, pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. Y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien. Y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatita últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Edipox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el Stadium de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? Los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTV y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces, creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club, por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible. O sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no. Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic. Ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic. Hoy día es aniversario del club. Déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no, Tucán, jugaremos Gartic. No quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic. Ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas. No me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos, Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar. No, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno, muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me niego, muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic. Vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goklingo, huevadas hablas. Ya, espera, ¿qué habla este Ignacio Loza? Este Auri. Y bueno, muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico. Para mí, muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año. Porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez, y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros, Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipo chicos como Dorniro, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen, chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé, tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor, la peor. De los últimos 10 años, ¿se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver, ustedes pónganse a pensar, si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos, sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X. Así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo vuelvo a repetir, yo voy a hablar de lo que veo en la cancha y este martes si es que Bolívar gana se va a aplaudir y si es que Bolívar pierde, bueno, también se va a criticar algunas cosas y si han fallado en algunas cosas igual vamos a criticarlas, vamos a observarlas y vamos a dar nuestro criterio. Pero fuera de eso,